Hello and welcome to another pen video from me, Penultimate Dave. So I have a new pen here. I actually have a couple that I'm going to show you, but this is a new pen. This is an Opus 88 Koloro. Now, John Hall from right here offered to send me this pen, wanted some feedback, and also asked if I wanted to do a review on it. I said I would. Now, in comparison, this is the Opus 88 Koloro Demonstrator. Now, these names always confuse me. Opus 88 is the brand name, so it's the company name. So they're both going to be called Opus 88, but they're both Koloros. But then this one is a demonstrator, and now Opus 88 have also brought out a Koloro color demonstrator in this size, but in a color. This is always a little bit strange on how they call these pens. But anyway, that aside, I wanted to show you this pen. So John actually mentioned to me that he had an Opus 88 Koloro and he had a titanium nib. Now, if you know Opus 88, you'll know that they always provide JoWo steel nibs on their pens, and they typically are fine, medium, or broad. And I think you can now, from some retailers, get some stubs as well. So the difference with this pen is John actually has retrofitted this with a JoWo titanium nib. Now the first thing I know you're going to say is, aha, JoWo don't make titanium nibs. Well, actually, they do now. Now, they have made this in the number 5 nib. I don't know if they're going to be making it in a number 6. So let me just show you these pens in comparison here. If I unscrew the cap on each of these, and I'll show you the difference between these two pens to start with. So, you can see here initially there's a number 5 size nib here. Now this is a titanium nib, it is unbranded. I don't know if there will be branding on that nib. And then here you can clearly see the steel nib, and that's a number 6 size nib on the Opus 88 Koloro Demonstrator. Now I don't know if JoWo are making a number 6 size nib. I would actually be quite intrigued actually to give that one a try if they do. The purpose of this review, really, it's the Opus 88 Koloro. And as I mentioned, it's got the titanium nib. So let me just put these back on, and I'll show you a little bit more of the Koloro. So this is the pen. Now this is the Koloro in Opus 88 Koloro in the blue finish. Now they call it blue, but actually I find it's more green than anything. Like the outer plastic parts of the pen are certainly blue in colour, but then the almost a clear or semi-transparent, semi-translucent material is in a green material. But this is known as the blue. So here is the cap finial, and the pen tapers up to the center point and then starts to taper back down again. You have a clip here, which is quite functional. It's quite stiff though. You also have Opus 88 engraved there on the pen. The body tapers down towards what would be the blind cap, and if I unscrew this, you'll see here this is the number 5 titanium nib. Now this has no markings on it whatsoever. This is the JoWo number 5 titanium nib. Now I don't know if they're going to put markings on these in future. You can see here the plastic feed that it has here. Now, obviously there's no markings on it, so I don't really know what width this pen is. Now, I would say that just by looking, if I unscrew my broad nib and I put these comparable together, I would say that's more of a fine nib than a medium nib. But I might be wrong. To me, it's quite a fine tip, but there isn't a lot of difference between a fine and a medium nib. So again, like, this is the nib. It's actually quite interesting. Now, these Koloro pens, like the demonstrator, are eyedropper. So you basically unscrew the pen here, and you eyedropper fill the body of the pen here. Now, there is this shutoff valve. Now, this basically, I don't know if you'll be able to see here, but it moves this, allows you to move this up and down to restrict or shut off the ink flow. Now, I've never really found it shuts off the ink flow really permanently in my Koloro demonstrators. I know a lot of people say that it does, but I find it tends not to. That aside, I like them. There's also a O-ring here, which is good for making sure that the seal is good and the pens don't leak. And that's really it. This is the Opus 88 Koloro, but this has the titanium nib on it. So I think let's do a size check. So the Opus 88 is about 143 millimeters, and the Koloro demonstrator is about 150. So you can see the difference there. It is a smaller pen. Now, let's see if I can also do a measurement here between the two. The Opus 88 Koloro from the tip of the tines is around about 127 millimeters, and then the Koloro demonstrator is around about 138 millimeters. Now, the 88 Koloro is fully capped, is just under 24 grams. The cap is just under 11 grams, and the body is just under 10.5 grams. Now, the Opus 88 Koloro demonstrator is just under 26.5 grams. The cap is just over 10 grams, and then the body of the pen, we're looking at just under 16 grams. So I'm going to ink this up with Waterman Intense Black. This is a black that I've not used for some time. Now, what you do is uncap the pen, unscrew the barrel, and then what I tend to do is actually unscrew this a little bit, just to create a little bit more of a gap there. And then I will take my pipette or my syringe, whatever you want to use, and I will just eyedropper this. And if you're eyedroppering, you have to be a little bit careful on what ink you're putting in there, that it doesn't actually overfill itself. So I'm not going to fill this fully up to the brim, but I am going to fill it up a little bit. And it's already starting to bubble out of the feed there. So I'm just going to go very carefully, because I'm trying not to get ink on my hands. I will put the cap back on the bottle, because I don't want an inky mess everywhere. So here we have the Opus 88 Koloro, and this is the blue, and it has a titanium nib, and it's either a fine or a medium. It's not labelled, as I showed you earlier. In terms of line variation, this is what you will get. Normally I will not push titanium nibs because there are horror stories of the tines not having the memory bounce back and splaying. But this pen I have been pushing a little bit more. Now I'm not going to push it heavily, but there is a little bit of a line variation going on here. And you'll see it here in these figure of eights. There you go. So you can see a little bit of line variation going on there. Now in terms of wetness for this titanium nib, it's actually quite wet. Let me do the downstroke test as well. So that is quite a wet nib. And this is an A4 notepad. So for me, this is actually quite nice. And you can see here that I can get quite a bit of line variation out of this pen. So for me, I'm finding the feedback on this, it has more feedback than the Yovo steel nibs, for sure. And I've typically had this with other Bock titanium nibs, but it's not an unpleasant feedback. It's just more of a pencil-like feedback. You feel it as you're writing along the page, and you can definitely feel it there. But for me, this is actually quite an impressive nib. And it actually makes me want to have more titanium nibs in my collection. I probably wouldn't be putting a titanium nib on a Conid. I think if I wanted a Conid bulk filler, full size, king size, then I would really go the full hog and put a gold nib on it. But for what is a relatively inexpensive pen here, we're talking around about £70–75 for this pen. I think this is actually a really good nib to put on it. Now, John Hall, right here, is looking to retrofit more of these. He's thinking about taking these to the London Fountain Pen show in March, and I do hope that John does, because I think this actually would be quite a nice combination of pen versus nib. Now, I don't know what the price will be on these. Titanium nibs tend to be a little bit more expensive than a steel nib, but nowhere near as expensive as a gold nib. So I'm not sure what price John will be looking at on these, but I think it's actually a really good combination. So if you're going to the London Fountain Pen show, check out right here, John Hall, and see if he's got any of these Opus 88s with the titanium nib. So there you have it. That's the review of the Opus 88 Koloro with the titanium nib. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next pen video. Bye bye.